Well, we're going to stay on this topic right now. Catherine McKenna is Canada's Environment and Climate Change Minister. She has joined us now from Ottawa. Minister, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
Well, you know, I was in bed last night when all of a sudden my phone was going off, all these tweets saying this deal has been reached, this deal has been reached. What's your assessment of it?
Well, it's really exciting. I was part of the negotiations in Vienna this summer, working really hard so we could get a phase down of HFCs. And to put it in context, HFCs are used in refrigeration and air conditioning, and they're thousands of times more potent than other greenhouse gases. And so this deal will be like taking 200 million cars off the road every year. It will also help keep the temperature rise by this deal in particular by half a degree. So when we're trying to keep global warming well below 2 degrees, this makes a huge difference. So it was really exciting. It was hard fought. We had amazing Canadian negotiators. I was obviously working on climate change action here at home, but great Environment and Climate Change Canada negotiators working with the U.S. John Kerry was there, working really hard to get this deal. So it's a really good news story, very practical action in advance of COP22 in Morocco this year, where where the Paris Agreement is coming into force. So a really good news story.
Well, a good news story, but as we said right off top, there are critics of this deal. They are criticizing the fact that countries like India and Pakistan don't have to freeze their usage until 2028. China, the largest producer of HFCs, won't have to cut their production or use until 2029. What do you say to critics like that who say this does not go deep enough, does not go quickly enough?
Well, you know what? You need to see real action. This was hard fought for many countries who use HFCs in air conditioning and in high ambient temperature countries. They need replacements. So it's going to take a while to get the replacements. The negotiations, we got a lot further than where we were before. And as I said, this is making a real difference. We have countries that have committed to taking their own domestic action, are coming up like Canada with their plans. But this is where the whole world has come together and agreed on a schedule, a very science-based schedule, where they'll be evaluated on how the emissions, how they're reducing emissions. We're providing financial support. And it's really a success story. You might remember the hole in the ozone that was almost 30 years ago that we were working on it. It was through the Montreal Protocol. So the same agreement that we're working through right now, a huge success story for Canada. Worked very well to phase out, these substances, which were called HCFCs, that were making the hole in the ozone. So we've almost repaired the hole in the ozone, but now we need to phase out HFCs, which are really potent. And so this is a great step. And so, yes, can we always do better? Yes. Hopefully that we can continue to improve, but actually getting an agreement where we have all countries on board, including India, which was having a bit of a hard time coming to an ambitious schedule. I think this is great. It's a great story for Canada, great story for the world.
Well, you say it's going to be costly for India and other countries that have to deal with very hot climates. But, business here in Canada have basically said that coming up with alternatives to HFCs is also costly. What about the cost to business in Canada? How will this have a practical impact on businesses?
Well, so there's going to be a regulatory framework, the way we do it for other substances that are polluting, and we'll be working with industry here. And it's always an opportunity too. So there's an opportunity to find replacements for HFCs. For developing countries in particular, we recognize that there was a cost. So Canada stood with the U.S. and other countries in New York during the Climate Week a few weeks ago to come up with additional funding to support them. And so, there's a huge cost to inaction as well. We know the planet is warming at a pace that is completely unsustainable, and this is a really significant action. And when you look at the costs are actually relatively minimal. And as I say, it's an opportunity to come up with new substances. We already have them there for refrigeration, for air conditioners, and really make a huge difference for our planet. And as we look at what action we need to be taking, making sure that the whole world is coming together is going to make a real difference. But
Minister, will you be helping businesses make that transition, though? Is there any type of funding for them in Canada?
In Canada, the way we work through regulations, we sit down with businesses. We understand the challenges. We make regulations based on their input. There's a process to go through, and I think that there's as I say, a huge opportunity to use substances that are a lot less polluting. And we'll be working with industry, and I think everyone wants to see real action. You saw a couple of weeks ago that we will have a price across the country on carbon pollution. This is also part of action that we need to be taking. And
well, let me jump there though, because as you say, the Prime Minister said if provinces don't come up with their own regimes for carbon, a price will be imposed by the federal government. But what about Canadians who are worried already with that regime alone, with what's happening with the Paris Treaty? What about Canadians that are worried about their bottom line, the fact that they're going to have to pay more for heating, the fact that they're going to have to pay more for cooling, for operating the car? And now, in addition, do they need to then start saving up money to replace their central heaters, to replace their central air conditioning? What about the cost to average Canadians?
So, let's talk about the cost when it comes to carbon pricing. Provinces, so first of all, 80% of Canadians live in a jurisdiction where there's a price on pollution. This will, in some cases like British Columbia, they've made it revenue neutral, which means they give the money back to consumers through tax cuts as well as to businesses. And so there's ways in terms of carbon pricing to design a regime that makes sense for particular provinces. And we all know we need to be taking action. I was lucky, this week I was in Winnipeg where I saw a New Flyer, a company that produces electric buses and actually saves money over the life cycle of the buses for municipalities. I was also in Edmonton.
Sorry to interrupt you again,
Yep.
just because we're losing our time. But again, to the average consumer, though, for people at home and that they're hearing this news, I don't think. Well, I don't want to presuppose what people are thinking, but certainly to environmental action is something that many Canadians support, but also many Canadians are concerned about their monthly bills going up and having to replace, again, their central heating units, their central air conditioning units. Is this something that Canadians are going to have to start budgeting for?
So this is about, future products. So there'll be future products on the market that won't use HFCs. So this isn't something, that's happening today, and it's working with businesses. Consumers won't, have to reduce their, won't have to change their air conditioning, now when they go in the future. That the choice of products won't include ones that have HFCs. But all of this is part of, making serious action to tackle climate change, but in a way that makes economic sense. So I was going to say I was in Edmonton and I went to see Net Zero houses. So Landmark Homes, a company creating great jobs in Alberta, is producing homes that actually produce energy. So I was looking at the utility bills for one of the homeowners in what looked like a regular suburban home. She was actually making money. And this is about how we move forward in a thoughtful way. Energy efficiency can save money. We're going to be rolling out our climate plan in the fall and certainly making sure that we have incentives to create more energy efficient homes so that you can save money on utility bills is really important. And at the end of the day, we also know the huge impact and costs of climate change, whether it's flooding, whether it's forest fires. We know the Arctic is quite literally melting, which is having a huge impact on the lives of the Inuit and the people who live in the north. There's a huge cost to inaction, and so we're trying to position ourselves well, both in Canada, but also as a global community, so that we can address the impacts of climate change and put ourselves on a more sustainable path, because the cost that's really going to be borne is going to be the cost to our grandchildren and children of inaction. And so these are thoughtful measures that are going to make a real difference, and today a huge success story.
Minister, thank you very much for your time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And that is Catherine McKenna, the Minister of Environment and Climate Change. She joined us in Ottawa.